You may see, and it's written differently in every headline, but in a lot of the headlines, it's Israel has agreed to a 4-hour ceasefire daily for the humanitarian issues in Gaza so that those Gaza Palestinians that want to depart and leave the Gaza Strip are able to through Egypt, and that humanitarian goods can come in. I want to explain it a little bit. It's not really a ceasefire. It's a cessation for 4 hours. It also doesn't stop all military actions. This is in certain parts of the Gaza Strip. So people are notified. I think they get 3 hours of notice before the 4 hours begins. The first one happened yesterday, but I want to just kind of reinforce this. Hamas kept firing rockets into Israel, and Israel continued their operations. But in certain areas where there were civilian populations that want out, they don't want to be there. They don't support Hamas. They don't want to die for their cause. That allows them the time to get to the next location to ultimately get out of Egypt. Now, how that benefits Israel is two ways. One, you take out your less civilian casualties, so less human shields for Hamas to use. Second, they're very short windows. So it's not giving Hamas the time to totally rebuild their forces. In fact, we know a number of Hamas leaders were killed last night, and that haven't gotten confirmation yet, but one of their top commanders of their military wing has at least been encircled by the IDF in Gaza. So whether he's dead yet or not, we don't know. But we know, again, there's been serious on-the-ground actions there. So it is not a ceasefire like no one is going to be shooting at each other for a week, or how long will it hold. They are still shooting at each other. It's just certain regions are kind of like safe zones for now, so long as groups like Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad abide by the ceasefire terms, which is to stop firing even into certain areas into Israel. Doesn't stop them fighting, necessarily shooting at Israeli military. Same with Hamas, but also same with the IDF taking out Israelis. So trying to make it safer for those civilians who want out and get some humanitarian aid in. You can't trust Hamas. You can't trust Palestinian Islamic Jihad, but you do want to give the opportunities to get the hostages out in a safe way. And also, if you can move more Palestinians who are not militants out of the battle zone, Hamas is not able to use them as human shields. Thus, all that imagery they try to use to make Israel look like the bad guy gets that much tougher. So don't think of it as a ceasefire in a bad way, or like Netanyahu is folding to pressure from the international community. These are short cessations of conflict in certain zones. Israel is still fighting right now as we speak, even if one of those, quote, ceasefires was ongoing. Rockets are still being fired into Israel, even if this, quote, ceasefire is still ongoing. It's a few hours a day, and we'll see how long it lasts. I think if it does not produce the release of hostages, maybe not all of them, but some of them, at least, like a trickle even beginning, then I'm not sure it lasts very long. But I did want to underscore to you, we're not just representing the families that you saw us with in Washington, D.C. They came all the way from Israel, yes, to tell their stories about whether it was their son, their twin brothers, or another brother, but they were also in Washington, D.C. to represent all of those 240 families and hostages who are not necessarily able to make the trip to Israel because of other issues they've got, maybe family, young people. A lot of these folks, the ones especially who lived on the kibbutz, the brothers I was with, their homes were destroyed. They could be rebuilt, but I mean, there's nothing to go back to. Half of the people on that kibbutz were killed, including the children. It is, again, a very difficult situation, but I wanted to underscore, so the ACLJ has gone from 4 to about 120 clients, it looks like, who are families of those hostages that we will be taking to all of these different international institutions because of our status at the UN. We're doing that right now, filing for on the working group on these illegally detained individuals and hostages. Basically, they have a hostage working group. We've been working with the Qataris, and we've worked with them before in the past, and we've gotten some success there. They also are, again, I mean, it's not like they can just snap their fingers and Hamas will do what they want, but they have that unique relationship between working with, for instance, the head of Mossad, which is Israel's CIA, and the head of the CIA of the U.S. were in Doha together meeting with their leadership on getting these hostages out. So it's always been a unique city in the last, I'd say, 15 years for different groups who don't always work together to be able to work together safely in times where they do have interest that coincide. So I think that's very important that we're right in the middle of that at the ACLJ. So it wasn't strange for us. We know the Qataris. We know the culture. We know the political leadership. I mean, the ambassador we met with to Washington was a sheikh. I mean, he is part of the royal family. And he said, I just was on the phone with Doha, and every day we get on the phone with Doha to work on hostages. One of their top focus so far has been hostages that also have American citizenship, especially because he's the DC, he's the ambassador to Washington, D.C., so he's the ambassador to the United States. And so there's a 3-year-old girl out of North Carolina who is a dual citizen that was taken. Her parents are killed, but she was taken with another Israeli family from her kibbutz. And there's been talks of people like her, and I hope those talks are true. When those reports come out, it will be wonderful if that starts happening. So far, they have not yet started to happen. But I just want to dispel the myth that Israel was somehow kind of like giving up the fight. That is absolutely not the case. This is a way to both continue the fight, not give Hamas a real ceasefire that lets them build up their supplies or get into new locations, because these only last 4 hours. And it also puts pressure points on the Qataris to say, okay, can you actually get some of these hostages freed during these periods where it would be safe to get them back over the border and delivered into Israel? I want to play the sound from Prime Minister Netanyahu. He was, and this is speaking in English to the U.S. audience about this decision to go for this 4-hour cessation, if you will, or pause, as he calls it.
How firm has the push been by President Biden and his administration for these humanitarian pauses, and what have you agreed to?
Well, one thing we haven't agreed to is a ceasefire. A ceasefire with Hamas means surrender to Hamas, surrender to terror, and the victory of Iran's axis of terror. So there won't be a ceasefire without the release of Israeli hostages.
So there you go, right there. Not a ceasefire. There's 240 at least hostages. We don't know how many are alive. That's a job that Israel's doing a lot of work on. So is Qatar, actually. And they are hoping, they've gotten some reports that some have gotten medical care that have been needed, that some of the children actually have been taken care of. Of course, horrendous situation for them. I'm not trying to say this is wonderful that Hamas is doing this. I mean, but that they're getting a lot of pressure from the Qataris to make sure those people stay alive. And again, we're going to keep this pressure up. So we are not even close to done with these efforts. We are now going to 120 new clients.